defeat to Brighton with a win in their final Champions League group game against Dinamo Zagreb. Now, here's a sour point, though, and it's been covered, of course, largely this morning, but we'll touch on it. Ben Chilwell, now a doubt for Qatar. Hamstring injury, so possibly he might miss out. Southgate's already got fitness concerns over Reece James and Kyle Walker, as well as Calvin Phillips. Now, many people have been saying that the Premier League and the FA should have done more to protect players ahead of Qatar. What else could they have done? I mean, the last weekend before we all head off, there are no Big Six fixtures. So surely that's doing something, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, whatever the circumstance would have been, there was always going to be a conundrum or a challenge. You know, we debate the challenges that a Summer World Cup brings because our players are exhausted and run down from their, exertions during the course of a season. And then we have a Winter World Cup where our players will be more at their peak, and there's going to be a consequence of that, which is certain players are going to get themselves in the way of injuries. And unfortunately, it will be that, and it will be that, I suspect, across all the countries, all the teams that are playing competitive football up until the last minute. Because as much as the pinnacle of football is the World Cup, it's domestic football that drives football full stop and drives the revenue streams, the economics and the entire engagement, because if a tournament comes along once every 4 years, what are you going to do in the meantime? You're going to be making sure that football runs and sprints towards the finish line of continued success. So you can't diminish the domestic leagues. Now, people will say, well, yes, you can once every 4 years because it is the festival of sport, is the piece de la resistance. But you simply cannot, because then you'll have the argument which is now being raged about compressed fixture lists. How are people going to play? How many games are we going to have played for this? And we listen to people constantly talk about it. I just think it is the reality of the world that we live in football.
Well, I mean, there are going to be more, Simon, of these club versus country type stories in the build-up to the first kick-off over in Qatar. I mean, Premier League clubs here are said to be ready to reject a further request from Argentina to leave their players out the final round of domestic matches before the World Cup. I mean, they want their players to miss the Premier League fixtures on November 12 and 13 so that they can begin their World Cup preparations early, and they think their request's a valid one.
Well, they're not, because FIFA have already legislated for the fact that players don't have to be released until November the 14th, so that's the end of the discussion. And if you wanted some goodwill, go back and look at the release of Aston Villa's players reluctantly against the wishes of the club and the players' conduct when they actually breached the guidelines, and the coaches themselves told the clubs that they wouldn't play them in more than one game and did precisely what they wanted to. So if you're going to go down the camp of looking at a legislative position, well, you already know what the regulations are. If you're going to go down the position of goodwill, well, there's none towards you. So I don't think there should be any sentiment, not just because it's an international rival that we might end up playing in the tournament at some point if we're fortunate enough to get to that stage, but it's simply because them's the rules. And again, if you're going to pull into the scenario of goodwill, well, again, like I've just said, there isn't any. 18 months ago, or a year or 15 months ago, when we had all that debacle and fiasco about people being released, and we started to begin to unwind this idea that football had got every single footballer vaccinated, and began to find out that actually that they hadn't, because we were given this, sort of understanding that everybody's been vaccinated in football, everyone knows what the rules are. When they started flying into countries and they couldn't get in because they hadn't been vaccinated, it started to unwind the thinking that football had put forward. So no, I don't think there should be any latitude. Absolutely none.
You think every Premier League club who's requested by the Argentinians to do this should say, sorry, we're not?
Well, whoever is requested,
do one.
The rules are the rules. They are. FIFA put the rules in place, and whatever we think of FIFA, those are the rules. November the 14th is the release date. End of discussion.
Yeah. So that would mean that the 6 Argentinians in the Premier League, Lisandro Martinez, Garnacho at Manchester United, Buendia, Martinez at Villa, Romero at Tottenham, McAllister at Brighton. No, we're keeping them. No matter what you think.
Well, don't you think it's a bloody sauce in the first place?
Well, I'm not surprised that they try their arm, they chance it, and see if they can get them out early.
They can't turn it into some sort of situation where there's confrontation involved, or people have ill will towards one another. It is. We all know where we are. We all know where we stand. We're all governed by the same rules. In which parallel universe would you think anyone's going to give anybody some dispensation? Least of all, if we're going to go back to the ill will scenario, to a country that cocked a schnook at the domestic clubs that they're now asking for. The audaciousness of football sometimes, the brass neck is, I've insulted you, I've diminished you, I've demeaned you, but by the way, I want a favour. What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Something about Argentina requesting something so close to World Cup from England.
Yeah, it doesn't sit well, does it?
It doesn't sit particularly well, does it? So another